you meet a non-Muslim, even if you don't know anything, at least say that there is one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instead of keeping quiet. If you keep quiet, you get 0 marks. If you say to a non-Muslim, if you don't know, the least you can say, I said, is there's one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if they agree or don't agree, at least you will get sawab. So whatever you know, the least a Muslim can say is that there's one Allah. Least. If you know about dawah, you can say 1,000 things. But the least a Muslim can say, no Muslim can say, I don't know about Islam at all. Then he's not a Muslim at all. So when I was trying to explain that the least you can say, instead of not doing anything, at least say there's one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even you may not be able to convince him, instead of keeping quiet. Now same thing, Jamal Badvi, when he said that you have to say the right thing at the right time, so both are correct, but instead of not saying anything, at least say something. That doesn't mean you have to keep quiet. And even Jamal Badvi didn't say that you have to keep quiet. So best is to say that if you know how to do dawah, if you are well versed with analyzing the thing and how to convey the message, it is the best. But if you are not experienced in the field, the least you can do is say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then inshallah, as time passes, the moment you are not able to convince, when they ask you a question, you come and do your homework. But even if you don't know the answer, the moment you say that one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're not able to convince, at least you will get the sawab instead of keeping quiet. But many a time the Muslims, they say, I don't know how to do dawah, so they keep quiet and they let the opportunity go. Therefore, I disagree with the opportunity being let away. You should go and do dawah and try and convince in the best way that you can. Hope that answers the question.
If we take a question from brother.
Assalamu alaikum. This question is directed to Brother Zaik. Basically, your speech was very enlightening. However, there was one point which I was a bit mind-geared on. Basically, you kind of went endlessly on how it's quite important to do the dawah work and the itikaf work, even if we know very little. But basically, and how you have to be how it's important to be a complete Muslim, not to, it's not important that we get our full Muslim community completely up to scratch before we do the dawah work. But my question is basically, from the Muslim community I've been brought up with, I've seen, the Muslim community being very divided among themselves. So my question is, what hope do we have for giving dawah to a third party when we ourselves are split with our, with our beliefs and our, our doings? For example, if you take the Eid itself, which is like one of the important celebrations in the Islamic, in the Muslim thing. Basically, if we were doing it on 2 separate days, what hope do we have for the third party to who we are doing dawah to take upon our Eid when we are divided among ourselves?
Jazakallah khair.
There was a question that when we do dawah to non-Muslims, when the Muslims themselves are divided, for example, Eid, some people celebrate on different days. So if we ourselves are divided, how can we do dawah with the non-Muslims? Brother, I do agree that if the Eid is celebrated on different days in the same city, there will be little problem, but that should not disappoint us. Because Eid is something else. That does not mean that a certain group of Muslims, they disagree that Eid should not be today, should be tomorrow. So that is a difference in opinion. That doesn't mean that if we differ, we cannot do dawah at all. And I said that dawah is important because if you say that I will become a great, first I'll have enough knowledge on how to do dawah with non-Muslims and then start doing dawah, I say that time will never come. If you say first I'll read about Islam and then start doing dawah, that time will never come. The moment you start and you cannot answer, you immediately try and find the answer. But if you do not start doing dawah, the time will never come. Therefore, my advice is that whatever little bit you know, you at least start. They may not agree with you. The moment you don't agree with you, you go and try and do your homework. For example, if you fail in an examination, what do? If you fail in an examination, you go and do your homework so the next time you pass. But if you don't talk at all for years together, then you'll never start doing dawah. So my advice is that whatever little bit you know, you have to start, as our beloved Prophet Muhammad said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Propagate even if you know one verse. Now, if there's difference in opinion for certain things, like about Eid or anything else, that should not be a major thing. It is a problem, it's a minor problem. Because if, suppose, at that time the Muslims differ, some have Eid today, some have Eid tomorrow, that should not be a major problem. That's not an issue in which, because if the Muslims differ, that means you can't do dawah at all. You can sure, yeah. I mean, the full year is there. So what we should do, if these small mistakes are there, and because of that you say that, okay, I will not do dawah, I feel this is an excuse on the point of the Muslims to prevent doing dawah. See, we, alhamdulillah, even in Bombay it's the same thing. There are different opinions, but yet we are doing dawah. We are doing dawah with thousands of people. Thousands of people. And there are hardly any non-Muslims who object and tell us that why do the Muslims object? Why do the Muslims differ? Yeah, there's a little bit problem. There will be little bit problems in it. But that should not be a real case for not doing dawah. These are just small points which a person should neglect and should be interested in conveying the message of Islam to them.
Jazakallahu khairan. A question from a sister who has specifically asked that this be answered by Dr. Zakir Naik. She says that at my workplace, my non-Muslim colleague has a Muslim partner out of wedlock. My colleague seems quite interested in Islam, yet the Muslim seems reluctant to consider even a small aspect of Islam. How can I tackle this situation? Because so far, I do not feel like I'm achieving much.
Just repeat the question. At my workplace, my non-Muslim colleague has a Muslim partner out of wedlock. My colleague seems quite interested in Islam, but the Muslim seems reluctant to consider even a small aspect of Islam. How can I tackle with the situation? Because so far, I do not feel, since I am achieving
that I've achieved anything. Well, what the sister is saying is that she has a friend at work, and the friend has a Muslim partner that they're living together, not married. The non-Muslim partner, the friend of this sister, she or he is very much interested in Islam, but the Muslim partner is not at all. And she's trying to kind of tackle this issue, but without much success. So she's asking for some advice, some tip.
Ensure the two partners, one is Muslim, one non-Muslim, yes, and trying your level best to do dawah with the non-Muslim.
Yes.
That's fine. As far as doing dawah to non-Muslim is concerned, as it's a similar question asked by several people, it's continuing, that when we do dawah to a non-Muslim, the best is to try and understand what the non-Muslim is interested in. If the non-Muslim is interested in science, talk about science. If they're interested in anything dealing with character, deal with character. If the non-Muslim is interested in talking about history, talk about history.
Dr. Zakir, I think the obstacle or the problem is the Muslim partner, it's not the non-Muslim. The non-Muslim partner wants to learn about Islam, or he or she is interested on Islam. But it's the Muslim who is becoming the obstacle. He or she is not wanting to know anything about Islam at all. Now, how can this friend tackle this issue? The Muslim is the obstacle.
Since the Muslim is not interested in speaking about Islam and the non-Muslim is more interested, how can she do the job? It is both. You have to do Islah, at the same time do dawah. Islam is speaking about Islam to a Muslim who's just a namesake Muslim. So what we have to do is that we have to speak about Islam to the Muslims also. That's what's important, because some people are just namesake Muslims. So you have to talk about Islam to that namesake Muslims, that what is right and what is wrong. At the same time, you have to speak with the non-Muslims who's interested in Islam. So what we have to do that if suppose certain person is just a namesake Muslim, then we have to talk about Islam. And the reason is that some of the people are just namesake Muslims. We have to talk about Islam, talk about science. For example, there's a talk I've given on Quran and modern science. And if we talk about Quran and modern science as compared, what is compatible or not compatible, it helps us in conveying the message. Similarly, on the other hand, the Muslim likes Islam, but the Muslim who's a namesake Muslim, he is not too much in favor. So we have to see to it and try and convince them. Convince the Muslim who's a namesake Muslim that dawah is compulsory. And at the same time, convey the non-Muslims and tell the non-Muslims about Islam. What happens that many a times, because these namesake Muslims, they don't know about Islam,